You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Our review of Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out film. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, was dropped in select theaters on November 26th. And shockingly, I didn't even hear about it until I saw like a random ad on Facebook pop up. And Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man's a Knives Out mystery, will actually drop on Netflix on December 12th. But with that, let's get into our review of it. After a brief sojourn in a galaxy far, far away, acclaimed director Rian Johnson has spent the past 8 years working on the misadventures of Daniel Craig's detective Benoit Blanc. It's a Netflix film. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, will get a limited theatrical release, but it will ultimately be seen by most audiences on the small screen. And that's a shame, since it looks great and would likely go over well as a late autumn crowd pleaser. It's also the first movie in the series that's a straightforward murder mystery instead of a subversion of one, which winds up being the film's best attribute. The film starts off not with Blanc, but with our functional main character, Reverend Jud Duplencity, a down-on-his-luck young priest assigned to aid a small, insular parish led by the domineering Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, played by Josh Brolin. Wicks is an elder firebrand who keeps his small group of church-going regulars in check with rants and deceit, leading Judd to take no small umbrage with the man. But when, after a sermon, Wicks collapses with a blade in his back, there is no obvious way for someone to have killed him, even though all eyes fall on Judd for having the most obvious motive. Enter Craig's Benoit Blanc, who finds what might just be his most perplexing case yet. As a general supporter of Johnson's films who was severely disappointed in the second film in the series, Glass Onion, it's good to see the director back in strong form with Wake Up Dead Man. It doesn't beat Knives Out for emotional resonance. O'Connor's layered but understated turn as Judd doesn't quite generate the same amount of pathos as Ana de Armas Marta did in the first film, but gets close. But it does wind up being the best mystery of the bunch. The answer here is not obvious, and the method of how the killing and subsequent machinations were achieved is actually inventive. And while not every plot beat or line of dialogue is perfectly executed, Johnson's command of his directorial style is as capable as it's ever been. This is especially true of the film's visuals. Johnson's films, all of which have been photographed by longtime collaborator Steve Yedlin, always look fantastic, and Wake Up Dead Man is no exception. Although the marketing may have oversold the film's alleged gothic influence, which amounts to no more than 2 or 3 standout moments, the earthy green-brown color palette and use of lighting and framing conjures a genuinely cozy atmosphere in its early segments. This makes the darker turns later on feel like an invasion of a sanctified space. And since the film is about a small church unraveling after the death of their pastor, it's a potent parallel. Yet, if Wake Up Dead Man is a stronger film than its predecessor in terms of plot, it shares the same weaknesses in terms of character. Craig is as watchable as he's ever been, and both O'Connor and Brolin do their jobs admirably. But like with previous Blanc films, Johnson stuffs his cast with capable performers and then fails to give half of them anything to do. Talented actors like Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott, Cailee Spaeny are technically in this movie, but they don't leave an impression because the screenplay doesn't afford them much room. This is doubly frustrating because every member of Wicks Parish is given at least a hint of a motive, but the movie doesn't develop many of them beyond a cursory setup. Leaving these characters stranded as they search for a purpose the film never bothers to provide. Also, Johnson hasn't completely curbed his worst inclinations as a writer, sneaking in several cheeky references to things like Star Wars, his deal with Netflix, and discussing the tropes of classic murder mystery novels like John Dixon Carter's The Hollow Man. Most of these gags feel like Johnson playing the audience instead of the characters acting in character, which hurts the movie's verisimilitude. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but if Johnson intends to keep going with this series, it's a tendency he'd be wise to drop. Still, the auteur filmmaker following up Knives Out, novel inversion of the classic whodunit formula, and Glass Onion's sadly laden and poorly structured plot with a real deal murder mystery without any gimmicks was exactly what the series needed. So, Wake Up Dead Man may not be the best Benoit Blanc film, but it satisfies by playing along with genre expectations instead of trying to outsmart them. Fans of the franchise may not notice the difference, but those who have been hungry for a more conventional mystery that the previous films have avoided up until now will likely come away pleased. However, the movie sells its full cast a little short, which is the biggest weakness to address if Rian Johnson decides to press on with this series. And before we go, let me know your thoughts on Wake Up Dead Man. If you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. As always, this episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. So don't forget, leave us a comment on all the topics we covered in the comment section below. And of course, you can find us on all major podcast platforms, Amazon, Google, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast from, we'll be there. Once again, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.